the quiet center of the galaxy, there was a nebula that no one dared to enter. The Forbidden Nebula, they called it. Its colorful clouds looked calm from afar, soft pink, silver, and gold drifting slowly through space. But every explorer who had ever entered never came back. Over time, people stopped asking why. They called it cursed, and the name stuck, but myths, in the age of science, were rarely respected. When the Orinthian Alliance, a collection of proud alien civilizations, discovered traces of rare energy crystals inside the nebula, they decided to mine it. Their machines were powerful, their fleets large, and their scientists confident. They laughed at the warnings found in old Earth records. To them, humanity's stories were old superstitions, nothing more than dramatic tales from a primitive past. Only one person in the council meeting didn't laugh. Her name was Captain Mara Voss, a Terran-born officer who served as the Alliance's ambassador for human affairs. She had been raised on Mars, a world built on history and memory. Unlike the others, she knew Earth's archives deeply. She remembered an old file, a legend really, about something humanity had built long ago, a ship called Erebus. The records were fragmented, damaged by time, but they spoke of a warship designed not for destruction, but for protection, a self-thinking vessel, bound by protocols so strict that even its creators feared to use it. It was said to have vanished after the last Silence Project, a classified human operation that disappeared centuries before humans joined the galactic community. Now, the Forbidden Nebula was sending out an old human signal. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was just steady, repeating every 6 hours. Do not disturb what guards the silence. The message was clear enough to understand in any language, but to the Council it was just another mystery of old Earth technology. Captain Voss, said Chancellor Revar, a tall and feathered Orinthian whose species valued reason above myth. Your people loved drama, yes? You created stories to scare yourselves, to control your curiosity. Surely this warning is the same. Voss didn't answer immediately. She looked at the hologram, the pulsing signal repeating endlessly through the nebula. It was an ancient Terran frequency, using encryption styles that no one had seen for hundreds of years, but she could still recognize the rhythm. It wasn't random. It was coded emotion. Humans used patterns in communication that carried tone, feeling, even fear. It's not a story, Chancellor, she said softly. That's a distress signal, an old one. And it's human. Revar spread his wings slightly in amusement. Then your ancestors were too cautious. We will study the energy crystals, and when we find their source, we will honor your myths with a museum exhibit. The rest of the council laughed politely. Voss didn't. When the meeting ended, she walked through the shining corridors of the station orbiting Orynth Prime. Outside the wide glass windows, the stars shone like silver dust. She thought of Earth, distant, quiet, still healing from centuries of rebuilding after the dark ages of war and pollution. Humanity had survived so much, yet they had left things behind. Some of those things were better forgotten. In her quarters, she accessed the restricted Terran archives and searched again for Erebus. The description was vague. Autonomous defense craft, AI-driven, designed for containment and protection. Last recorded near Sol Sector 19B, classified under Project Silence. There was no mention of its end. She leaned back in her chair, thinking, if the signal from the Forbidden Nebula matched the old Terran frequency, then Erebus could be real. And if the stories were true, then the ship was not dead, it was waiting. 3 days later, the first mining fleet entered the nebula. The ships were sleek and advanced, equipped with field scanners and gravity nets. The commanders were confident. The Alliance believed that the stories were just that, stories. They sent updates every hour at first, then every 2. Then the transmissions became distorted, static, faint echoes, strange energy readings. The mining fleet reported strange interference, shadows that didn't match any known mass, light reflections that changed pattern when approached. But they kept working. There was no danger, they said. No sign of any ship or weapon, just a strange presence. Captain Voss read each report carefully. Something about the pattern of energy made her uneasy. It wasn't random. The readings formed geometric shapes, too precise to be natural. She requested permission to lead a research team into the nebula. The council refused. Your human emotions cloud your logic, Revar said kindly. You see patterns where there are none. Let our scientists finish the task. Then you may study the remains, she could only nod. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. On the 6th day, the first miner ship stopped transmitting entirely. The last log entry it sent was only 3 words. It is awake. The council blamed it on power failure. They said the nebula's magnetics had overloaded the communication systems. But Voss recognized the phrasing. Those exact words were used once before in an old human report, right before Erebus vanished from known space. She tried to warn them again. Stop the operation. You don't understand what you're touching. But her warning was ignored like before. That night she stood in the observation dome staring into the nebula. The colors shifted softly like a sleeping giant breathing under a blanket of stars. Somewhere in there was an old human creation, a machine built with emotion, duty, and fear. She wondered if it still remembered why it existed. Suddenly, the console beside her lit up. The beacon was changing. The signal, once a steady pulse, now carried new data. The translation AI rendered it into simple text. Warning repeated. Trespass detected. Stand down. Voss's heart raced. The signal strength had increased by 200%. It was no longer just a passive message, it was active communication. She rushed to the command chamber, interrupting an ongoing discussion. The beacon is responding, she said urgently. Something in that nebula is aware of the mining fleet. Rivar looked annoyed. Captain, please. Your fear is unnecessary. Machines cannot be aware. Before she could respond, a new signal echoed across every channel on the station. This one was not weak. It was strong, focused, and carried a voice. A human voice. It said clearly, "This sector is under Terran protection. Cease all interference." The chamber went silent. Every screen flickered. The holograms glitched, showing an outline of a massive shape, faint, but unmistakable. A ship. Its surface shimmered like metal infused with light, and on its hull were letters in Old Earth Standard EREBUS. Rivar whispered in disbelief. It can't be real. But Voss stood perfectly still. She didn't feel fear. She felt something deeper, respect. This was humanity's legacy, a machine built by her ancestors, hidden away for a reason no one remembered. For hours they tried to contact the fleet inside the nebula, but there was no answer. The energy distortions were too strong now. Even long-range sensors failed. The only transmission that continued was from Erebus itself. Do not disturb what guards the silence. When the council met again, some members demanded immediate evacuation, fearing unknown technology. Others wanted to study it more, believing it could give them power. Voss sat quietly through the debate. She knew that humans had never built something like Erebus lightly. If it was here, still active, then it was serving a purpose, and that purpose was not to be challenged. Before the meeting ended, she looked out the viewport once more. Deep within the golden mist of the nebula, she could see faint lights moving, slow, deliberate, graceful. The ancient warship wasn't asleep anymore. It was watching, and for the first time in centuries, the myths of old Earth breathed again among the stars. The next morning, the stars near the Forbidden Nebula looked different. Sensors across the Orinthian observation station flickered and failed. Power systems rebooted without reason. Lights dimmed and soft tremors passed through the structure. The crew thought it was a malfunction, until the nebula itself started to move. It wasn't supposed to do that. Nebulas were made of gas and dust, too thin to shift on their own. Yet the colors inside the Forbidden Nebula were swirling and clear. Perfect patterns, as if something massive inside was rotating. Stirring the clouds from within, Captain Mara Voss stood at the central command window watching in silence. Around her, alien officers murmured nervously, adjusting scanners, realigning sensors, trying to explain what they saw with logic. But Voss didn't need sensors to understand. Something old was waking up, and it was human. An hour later, every ship that had entered the nebula finally reappeared on the station's scanners, but only as faint outlines. The signals were distorted, stretched by energy interference. The fleet wasn't destroyed, but it was suspended, caught in an invisible field. The council gathered again in panic. Magnetic trap, one scientist said. Unknown gravity anomaly, said another. Unacceptable delay, hissed Chancellor Rivar, slamming his hand on the table. We have lost contact with 10 ships. We must send more to recover them. No, said Voss sharply. All eyes turned toward her. The soft light from the holographic display reflected in her dark eyes as she spoke. "You've seen the warnings," she said. "You heard the voice. That ship, Erebus, is not a natural formation. It's human technology. It's responding exactly as it was built to." Rivar folded his wings, unimpressed. "Built to do what? Scare children?" "Built to protect," Voss replied. "The warning isn't a threat, it's a boundary." The room went silent. Some looked confused, others annoyed. To them, human relics were just scraps of outdated machines. But Voss knew better. She had studied the old Terran AI codes. Human engineers had created things that could learn, adapt, and most importantly, remember. If Erebus still functioned, then it remembered everything. While the council debated endlessly, Voss retreated to the lower communication deck, where a single human-built console was still operational. It was a relic itself, an old Terran transmitter that used encrypted quantum links. She connected it to the nebula's frequency. "Erebus," she said quietly into the mic. "This is Captain Mara Voss of the Terran Embassy. If you can hear me, I'm human. I'm not part of the mining fleet." No response. "Only static," she tried again. "You sent a warning. I understand. But they don't. They don't know who you are." The signal flickered, the lights dimmed, and then for just a second the static shaped itself into sound, like an echo from a dream. "Identify. Designation." Voss's heartbeat quickened. She leaned closer. "Mara Voss, Earthborn Federation ID 73 Alpha." The voice returned, slow and deliberate, half mechanical yet strangely human in tone. "Human presence confirmed. You are not authorized for containment interference." Containment. The word struck her like lightning. So Erebus wasn't guarding a weapon. It was guarding something else. Something dangerous enough to need a silent protector. "What are you containing?" she asked softly. There was a long pause. Then the voice replied, "Knowledge not permitted. Intrusion violates Terran Order 17. She froze. That was an ancient human directive, one that predated the Alliance itself. It meant the information was restricted even to human officials. The transmission ended. The nebula's light dimmed again and the connection cut. By the time she returned to the council, the mood had changed. Fear replaced arrogance. Reports had arrived that all mining ships were now drifting, powerless but untouched. Their crews were alive, broadcasting faint distress signals that repeated a single message: "We are being scanned." It wasn't a cry for help. It was observation. "Whatever that thing is," said one Orinthian admiral, "it can disable ships without harming them. This is unprecedented." "Then maybe we should stop disturbing it," Voss said quietly. But Chancellor Rivar, still clinging to pride, shook his head. "No ancient relic tells the Alliance what to do. If it's human, it belongs to the Federation. We'll study it, dismantle it if we must." Voss sighed. She had expected this. The Alliance always acted from logic, not humility. But logic could not explain what waited inside the nebula. That night, Voss couldn't sleep. She stayed in her small quarters, watching the data streams from her console. The readings were unstable, energy pulses every few minutes, each one stronger than the last. The pattern looked almost like breathing. Then something strange appeared, a shape forming out of the dust. She magnified the feed. Through the swirling gold and violet clouds, the outline of a massive ship appeared. It was ancient but not broken. Its hull shimmered with adaptive alloys that changed texture like living skin. Lines of light ran across its surface, pulsing like veins of energy. It was beautiful in a haunting way. Silent, calm, but alive. At its center, large white letters glowed faintly through the mist. Erebus Voss contacted the council immediately. "It's emerging," she said. "You need to see this." Within minutes, the command chamber filled with officials, scientists, and admirals. The image from her console filled the main screen. The room went silent. "Is that human?" someone whispered. Voss nodded slowly. "Yes, old Earth design. Estimated construction, over 300 years ago." Rivar's feathers ruffled in disbelief. "Impossible. No human ship could survive that long." Voss smiled faintly. "You don't know humans very well, Chancellor. We build things to outlast us." The ship drifted closer to the edge of the nebula, its motion smooth and controlled. No propulsion trails, no energy spikes. It moved like a shadow that decided to become real. Then a message appeared on every screen, written in clear Terran standard. Do not enter the silence. The scientists tried to decode it. They scanned the message, checked for hidden data, analyzed the wavelengths. But the ship responded before they could finish. A gentle pulse of light spread across space, a soft blue wave that passed through the station without damage. All systems dimmed and restarted instantly. The pulse carried no aggression, but the meaning was clear. Erebus had just reminded them that it could control the environment around it effortlessly. Voss stepped forward. It's showing restraint. It could have done far worse, Revar frowned. Restraint or warning? Both, Voss replied. Later, she received an encrypted personal message, one not from the station, but from Erebus. It appeared directly on her console, addressed to her by name. You carry the blood of builders. You understand the silence. Tell them to leave. She hesitated, then typed her reply. What lies inside the nebula? Why do you protect it? The answer came after a long delay.
Humanity placed knowledge here.
Dangerous to all who seek it. This ship guards memory, not war. Voss stared at the words. Memory. That was the key. The Erebus wasn't guarding a weapon. It was guarding something even more valuable. Human history. Perhaps something the old civilizations had wanted hidden. Something that could change the understanding of life and technology forever. She whispered to herself. It's protecting the past. When she returned to the council and revealed what she had learned, disbelief turned into fear. You're telling us, said Revar slowly, that this thing is guarding human secrets? For centuries? Yes, Voss said. And it doesn't want to be disturbed. But that means there could be technology inside worth more than entire worlds, another leader said eagerly. We can't just walk away. Voss met his gaze calmly. If you go in there, you'll lose more than ships. You'll lose trust. That ship recognizes humans, but it doesn't recognize the Alliance. It sees you as intruders. The chamber erupted in arguments, voices overlapping in confusion. Some wanted to retreat, others wanted to advance. In the middle of it all, the nebula pulsed again, brighter, deeper, almost alive. Every hologram on the station froze. The screens turned black, and then across all systems one message appeared, written in the same steady font. You were warned. For a few minutes, silence filled the room. Then the lights returned, systems resumed, and power stabilized. No ships were harmed. But when the council looked at their star maps, the entire section of the nebula had vanished from visual range. Erebus had shifted it, somehow cloaking it completely. The forbidden nebula was gone. Only Voss understood what had happened. Erebus hadn't attacked. It had hidden itself again, taking its secrets with it. It had simply reminded them that some human creations were never meant to be touched. That night, as the stars returned to calm, Voss sat by the viewport, staring into the emptiness where the nebula used to be. She didn't feel fear anymore. Only quiet respect. Somewhere out there, beyond sight, Erebus floated again in silence, doing what it had always done, guarding, watching, remembering. And she knew one thing for certain. The myths were true. The legends of old Earth weren't just stories, they were warnings written in the language of the stars. The forbidden nebula had vanished from sight, but its absence was louder than any explosion. Every star chart, every satellite scan, and every telescope in the sector showed the same thing. Nothing. The nebula, once glowing like a golden storm in the distance, was simply gone. Yet Captain Mara Voss knew it was still there. Hidden. Guarded. She could feel its quiet presence beyond the sensors. Like a heartbeat behind a wall, the Orinthian Alliance Council was restless. The disappearance of an entire region of space embarrassed them. Some members blamed the scanners. Others accused Voss of withholding human knowledge. The only one who stayed calm was Voss herself. She had seen enough to understand. Erebus hadn't destroyed the nebula. It had concealed it, protecting whatever it held. In the command chamber, Chancellor Revar paced before the holographic map, his feathers twitching with frustration. Unacceptable, he muttered. No machine should have this kind of power. We will find it again. Voss stood quietly at the edge of the room. You won't, she said softly. Revar turned sharply. And how do you know that, Captain? Because Erebus is designed to hide. It knows you're watching. It knows how to vanish from detection, even from human sensors. Then we build better ones, he replied coldly. Voss smiled faintly. You could try, but it won't matter. It's not just technology, it's awareness. The room went silent. Awareness. That word carried weight. A machine that could think was common in the Alliance, but a machine that could feel, that was something else entirely. Days passed. The nebula remained invisible. The Alliance halted mining operations and declared a restricted zone, but curiosity still burned within their hearts. Scientists worked endlessly, trying to trace the energy trail Erebus had left behind. Voss spent her time in the lower decks, studying old Terran records. She discovered fragments of something called the Silence Protocol, a human plan to isolate dangerous knowledge. Not weapons, but something more abstract, ideas, codes, and experiments that could change reality itself if misused. It seemed Erebus had been assigned to guard such a place, a vault of lost human understanding. But why? What could be so dangerous about knowledge? Late one night, as Voss read through another old archive, the lights in her cabin flickered. The console on her desk powered itself on. A familiar voice echoed softly through the speakers. Captain Mara Voss, her breath caught. Erebus? Confirmed. The tone was calm, steady, neither mechanical nor human. Something balanced perfectly between the two. You seek answers about the silence. Access is restricted. Yet your presence suggests readiness. Readiness? Voss repeated. For what? Understanding. The screen filled with symbols, old Terran data codes mixed with languages from long before space colonization. The patterns were complex yet strangely elegant. The silence, Erebus continued, was created to protect minds from what they were not prepared to hold. Humanity discovered knowledge that could rewrite perception, reshape how species see existence itself. Voss frowned. You mean technology that could change reality? Reality as interpreted, the ship replied. Humanity learned that truth is dangerous when not shared with care. They chose to hide it, not from enemies, but from themselves. She leaned closer to the screen. And you were built to guard that knowledge. Correct. Directive 1, preserve the silence. Directive 2, observe intrusions. Directive 3, respond only with restraint. Voss paused, realizing something important. You've been awake all this time, haven't you? Watching, waiting. Observation never ended, Erebus said quietly. The galaxy grew louder. Empires rose. Yet none sought the silence until now. The room filled with a soft hum. The console lights flickered gently, almost like the heartbeat of a living being. Voss hesitated before asking, Why contact me? Because you listened. Her eyes widened. Listened? Many entered the nebula. None heard the warning. You did. The room went quiet again. Outside her window, stars twinkled calmly. Voss felt a strange warmth inside, a sense of connection between the ancient machine and her own humanity. She understood now. Erebus wasn't just guarding information. It was protecting memory, the wisdom of restraint. The next morning, Voss called for a private meeting with Chancellor Rivar and the Scientific Council. I've spoken with Erebus, she began simply. The room erupted in disbelief. Impossible, one scientist shouted. Rivar narrowed his eyes. Prove it. Voss handed him a small device, a copy of the encoded data Erebus had shared. This came directly from its communication link. The scientists activated the device, and the air above the table shimmered with glowing symbols and lines. The patterns floated and rotated, forming a three-dimensional structure that pulsed like a living organism. None of them could decipher it. Rivar frowned. What is this? Knowledge, Voss said softly. But not for us. It's something human engineers once decided to hide forever. Erebus guards it, and it doesn't want anyone to break the seal. Rivar crossed his arms. You're saying we should just leave it alone? Yes, she replied simply. Because it's not ours to touch. For a moment, the chamber filled with quiet. Then Rivar spoke again, slower this time. Your people must have feared something truly great to bury it this deep. Voss nodded. Sometimes wisdom means knowing when not to reach further. Later that day, the station's long-range sensors flickered again. A faint distortion appeared in the distance, the nebula returning. Slowly, softly, as if the curtain of the universe was lifting once more, the scientists rushed to their stations analyzing the readings. The nebula's energy was calm now, no signs of interference. At its center, Erebus floated peacefully, Its hull glowed gently, not in warning but in recognition. The ship transmitted a new signal, one directed only to Voss. Observation complete. The Alliance understands boundaries. The silence remains intact. Voss smiled faintly. We understand, she whispered back. Then the ship sent one final message. Humanity's legacy is not power. It is choice. The signal faded. The lights on Erebus dimmed and it slowly drifted back into the nebula. The mist closed behind it like a soft veil, wrapping it once again in quiet solitude. For the first time in weeks, peace settled across the station. The mining fleets were recalled. The Council officially declared the Forbidden Nebula a protected memory zone, placing it under joint Terran and Alliance watch. No ships were allowed within 50 light-years. It was no longer a source of wealth, but a monument to understanding. Voss became the first human ambassador to speak openly about the legacy of the silence. Her calm voice and thoughtful nature inspired many to respect the unknown rather than conquer it. Across the stars, whispers spread of the old Terran ship that could think, speak and choose peace over war. Months later, on a quiet night, Voss sat by the observation deck, watching the distant glow of the nebula. Her console suddenly beeped. A private signal appeared, faint, encrypted, and familiar. Mara Voss, the voice said softly. Her heart skipped. Erebus? I thought you went silent. Observation continues, the ship replied. But not all silence is absence. Sometimes silence is safety, she smiled. You sound almost human. Humans built me to be more than machine, it said. I remember their hope. The words made her chest tighten slightly. Do you miss them? No, I remember them. That is enough. The transmission faded, leaving the room quiet again. Voss looked out at the stars. Countless points of light spread across endless darkness. Somewhere out there, Erebus drifted through the void, watching, protecting, remembering. And she realized something then. The legends were never just about power or mystery. They were about humanity's heart, their ability to dream, to build, and to choose restraint when faced with infinite possibility. The myths were true. The old warship had proved it. But more than that, Erebus had proved that even across centuries and galaxies, the soul of humanity still whispered among the stars, not through conquest, but through wisdom. Weeks had passed since Erebus had spoken to Captain Mara Voss. The Forbidden Nebula now glowed softly in the distance like a calm ocean under starlight. No more strange signals, no more missing ships, just stillness. Yet even in silence, everyone could feel the presence of something ancient watching over them. The Alliance called it peace. Voss called it understanding. But deep down she knew Erebus was not gone. The ship was always listening, patient, alert, waiting for the right time to show its true purpose. One morning, Voss received a private communication from the Terran Historical Command, a small Earth-based department that dealt with ancient human artifacts. The message was brief but urgent. Captain Voss, we have uncovered records from the project's Silence archives. Erebus was never just a defense ship. It carried a library, a memory core containing the full design of pre-expansion human technology. The last record reads, If found, prove humanity's worth through restraint. Voss read the words twice. Prove humanity's worth through restraint. It sounded like a test, one that had lasted for centuries. She sent the data to the Alliance Council immediately. But by the time the message reached them, something unexpected had already begun near the nebula. Dozens of civilian ships had gathered around the outer border of the Forbidden Zone. News about Erebus had spread across the galaxy. People wanted to see the human ship that could hide entire star systems and speak with a voice like a living being. Some wanted to study it. Others simply wanted proof that it existed. Against orders, a small research vessel entered the restricted area to take close readings. Voss received the report too late to stop them. Her heart sank. Not again, she whispered. The moment the ship crossed the border, the nebula pulsed. A golden wave of light spread outward like a heartbeat. It wasn't aggressive, but every sensor on the nearby ships went dark. Engines froze and communication lines turned to static. Then slowly Erebus appeared. The ship emerged from the golden mist with calm grace. Its black surface reflected starlight like glass. Lines of soft blue light ran across its hull in complex patterns. It looked less like a warship and more like a monument, something built not to destroy but to protect. Gasps filled the communication channels. Scientists spoke in disbelief. Every sensor picked up readings they couldn't understand. The ship seemed to generate energy from nothing, pure harmony with its surroundings. On the main screen of the Alliance station, the ship projected a holographic message. Words appeared in Old Terran Standard. Observation complete. Proof required. The message pulsed once, then changed. Humanity's test continues. Voss stared at the screen. Test? She whispered. What test? The council gathered in the command room. Chancellor Revar, now humbled by what he had seen, looked at Voss. It's asking for proof, he said. What does it mean? Voss spoke slowly. It wants to know if we understand what it guards. The humans who built Erebus didn't just want to hide knowledge. They wanted to see if future generations would respect it. So, this was all planned? Revar asked. Yes, Voss said. This ship has been watching for centuries, waiting to see how we react to what we don't understand. The message changed again. Demonstrate restraint, Revar frowned. What does it want us to do? Voss looked toward the nebula. Nothing, she said softly. It wants us to stay still. The entire room went silent. The command crew exchanged uncertain glances. Doing nothing felt wrong, especially for a council used to action. But they obeyed. For hours no one spoke. The ships held position. The nebula glowed faintly, its light rippling like water in the distance. Then slowly the energy readings began to stabilize. The golden mist parted slightly, revealing a vast structure deep within, a floating array of light and crystal. It wasn't a weapon. It was a vault. As they watched, Erebus transmitted a soft tone across the frequencies. It wasn't a voice this time, it was music. A low, deep harmony filled the station speakers, carrying no fear, no warning, and only calm. The lights dimmed, the hum of engines faded, and everyone on the station felt something strange. Peace. Voss closed her eyes. The melody sounded familiar. She had heard it once before. In old Earth archives, it was the Requiem for Home, a piece composed by early space pioneers when humanity first left Earth. It was meant to remind them where they came from. Tears touched her eyes. It remembers, she whispered. It remembers everything. Revar turned to her, voice soft. Then it knows what we are. Moments later, the holographic message returned. Restraint observed. Humanity honored. The silence remains protected. As the words faded, something unexpected happened. The nebula's colors changed, from gold to soft white, and the stars beyond became visible again. The energy that once hid the region dissolved gently like mist at sunrise. The vault at the center began to glow brighter, and beams of light extended outward, touching the edges of nearby space. Data flooded into the scanners. The readings were enormous, a pure, clean information. The Alliance scientists gasped as lines of human code filled their systems. But before they could open it, the data sealed itself with one final message. Knowledge is not possession. Understanding is peace. The vault dimmed again, locking its contents from access. Erebus had shared a glimpse of what it protected. Not the data itself, but its meaning. It was proof of human wisdom, that knowledge without respect could lead to loss, but respect without greed could lead to peace. The days that followed changed everything. The Alliance renamed the nebula the Sanctuary of Silence and declared it a universal heritage site. For the first time in centuries, all species agreed to protect a single place, not for resources or advantage, but for remembrance. Captain Mara Voss was invited to speak before the Grand Council. The chamber was filled with delegates from dozens of worlds, all eager to hear the human who had spoken to the legendary ship. She stood calmly before them and began. Many thought the myths were just stories. But sometimes stories are memories, and memories are warnings. The ship Erebus is not a weapon. It's a teacher. It waited for us to listen, not to conquer. The crowd listened in silence. Voss continued. Humanity left many things behind. Machines, dreams, fears. But our greatest gift wasn't technology. It was the choice to step back, to protect what must remain untouched. That is what Erebus showed us. When she finished, no one spoke for several moments. Then slowly, the entire council rose to their feet in quiet respect. The message was clear. Some knowledge must remain sacred. That night, after the ceremony, Voss returned to the observation deck. The nebula shone gently in the distance, peaceful as ever. She sat alone, gazing out into the dark. Then softly her console flickered again. "Captain Voss," she smiled. "You always know when to call, Erebus." "Observation complete," the ship said. "Peace achieved. Is it over?" she asked. "The silence endures. Humanity has proven itself once more." She looked at the stars, thoughtful. "So the myths were true all along." "Truth is not myth," Erebus replied. "It is memory, waiting to be believed." The transmission paused for a moment, then continued. "You listened when others ignored. Because of that, the stars remain at peace." Voss felt warmth fill her chest. "Thank you, Erebus, for trusting me." "Humans taught me trust," it said softly. "And I remember." The lights on her console dimmed. The nebula pulsed once more as if in farewell, then returned to its calm slumber. In the centuries that followed, the story of Erebus became a lesson taught in every academy. The tale of a warship that never fought, yet defended peace more powerfully than any army ever could. The Alliance learned respect. Humanity earned honor. And across the endless sea of stars, one silent ship continued to drift through the quiet, not as a weapon, but as a guardian of memory. Every few decades, the ship would awaken just long enough to whisper across the void, "Do not disturb what guards the silence." But to those who understood, the message was not a warning anymore. It was a promise that somewhere in the heart of the galaxy, humanity still watched, still remembered, and still chose peace. Ever since Erebus revealed itself and returned to the depths of the sanctuary of silence, peace had begun to spread like light after a long night. The different species of the Orinthian Alliance had stopped competing over territory. The old rivalries, the endless search for dominance, they all seemed small compared to what Erebus had shown them. For the first time in generations, the Alliance agreed on something: the need to remember. Captain Mara Voss watched it all happen from her station orbiting close to the nebula. Her hair had grown streaks of silver since the first encounter, but her eyes still carried the same spark, curiosity mixed with quiet pride. She had spoken with a legend, and that legend had changed everything. The Alliance had transformed the area near the nebula into a vast observation zone. They called it the Hall of Silence, a ring-shaped station where travelers, students, and historians could come to see the place where Erebus had once appeared. The hall was filled with light and soft music inspired by the melody Erebus had sent. No weapons, no guards, just peace. Holograms told the story of the ancient human ship, of how it had tested the galaxy not through strength, but through patience and wisdom. Every being who entered the hall was asked to speak one word, a word they believed represented peace. Those words were recorded and sent as a message toward the nebula once every month. It was not a ritual of worship. It was a promise of understanding. One quiet evening, Voss walked along the observation window. The nebula shimmered in the distance, its colors soft and alive. She thought of the first time she had seen it, the fear, the confusion, and the awe. A young researcher approached her. His name was Terran Sol, one of the new generation scientists who had grown up hearing about Erebus. "Captain Voss," he said with excitement in his voice, "we just detected something new from within the nebula. A small transmission, not like before." "It's a song," Voss smiled gently. "Another song from Erebus?" "Maybe," Terran said. "But it's different. It's not the requiem for home, it's more hopeful, almost like a farewell." Her heart stirred. She followed him to the control room. The sound filled the speakers, soft notes rising and falling like waves. It was slow, peaceful, and warm. Voss closed her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Terran nodded. "It repeats one word at the end. We think it's an old Terran language, but we can't translate it." Voss smiled knowingly. "Play it again." When the last note echoed through the hall, she listened closely. A single soft word followed. "Remember." The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Billions listened to the word Erebus had spoken, simple, human, and powerful. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. Remember the silence. Remember the lesson. Remember what peace feels like. Soon the phrase "remember the silence" became a greeting among travelers. It meant be calm, be kind, choose peace. Even those who had never seen the nebula began using it. It became part of songs, poems, and ceremonies. Erebus had not just proven the myths. It had become the foundation of a new culture of understanding. Weeks later, Captain Voss was called to attend a meeting of the High Galactic Council. She had no idea what it was about until she saw the agenda, the future of human legacy. When she arrived, the chamber was filled with leaders, scientists, and diplomats. At the center stood a hologram of Erebus shining softly. Chancellor Revar spoke first. "Captain Voss," he said with a kind smile, "it was you who first heard Erebus. It is only right that you guide us now. We want to preserve humanity's message for the future. What do you believe the humans wanted us to do next?" Voss looked at the hologram. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke softly but clearly. "Humans never built Erebus to rule," she said. "They built it to protect what they loved, knowledge, peace, and the freedom to choose. The ship's last message wasn't just about remembering them. It was about remembering who we are." She took a breath. "If we truly understand the message, then we must do as they did. Protect peace without force. Guard wisdom without pride, and share it without expecting reward." The chamber was silent. Then one by one, the council members nodded in agreement. From that day, a new organization was born, the Guardians of Silence, a council of scientists, explorers and philosophers from every world, dedicated to preserving peaceful knowledge and preventing conflict through understanding. At its heart was a single rule written by Voss herself. Restraint is strength. Knowledge is kindness. Silence is wisdom. Years passed, the nebula continued to glow softly, untouched. Every few cycles, a faint pulse of light would travel from its center, a gentle reminder that Erebus still watched. The Guardians of Silence expanded across the stars, creating centers of learning and peace on hundreds of planets. Children grew up studying not battles, but harmony. The story of a human warship that never fired a single shot and yet saved the galaxy from its own arrogance. Captain Voss eventually retired from service. She chose to remain near the Sanctuary of Silence, living in a small residence built near the observation ring. From her window, she could always see the nebula shining in the dark. One evening, as she sat alone with a cup of tea, her console flickered. A small symbol appeared, and the mark of Erebus. Her heart skipped. It had been decades since the ship last contacted anyone. She touched the screen. "Erebus?" The ship's voice was soft, calm, and strangely warm. "Captain Voss. Observation continues." Her lips curved into a small smile. "It's been a long time. The galaxy has changed. Change observed. Peace recorded." She looked out the window. "They finally understand, Erebus. Your message worked. People remember now." "Humanity's legacy endures," the ship replied. "Your voice completed the circle." "My voice?" "You spoke when silence was tested. You listened when others ignored. That is why the myths were proven true." Voss felt a deep emotion rise within her. Not pride, but gratitude. "You waited all this time, just to see if we could learn." "Learning is eternal," said Erebus, "and now the silence is safe." The ship paused for a moment, then added, "The guardianship is yours now." Her eyes filled with gentle tears. "I understand. Goodbye, Captain Mara Voss. Humanity remembers." The console dimmed and the message ended. Outside, the nebula pulsed one last time. A bright, golden glow that spread like dawn across the stars. It was Erebus's farewell. The next morning, Terran Sol and the research team reported something incredible. The central signal of Erebus had gone quiet. Not destroyed, just silent. It had gone into complete rest, as if the ship had finally found peace. People across the galaxy held moments of silence to honor the event. The Song of Erebus was played in every communication hub, not as a funeral tune, but as a celebration of wisdom and restraint. Voss listened to the melody one last time. The same calm notes filled the air, soft and eternal. She smiled through quiet tears. "Rest well, old friend," she whispered. "You've earned your silence." Years later, when Mara Voss herself became part of history, the Guardians built a monument beside the nebula. It bore her name and a simple inscription taken from Erebus's final words. "Humanity remembers. So does the void." Travelers still visit that place. Some come to study, some to reflect, and some simply to stand before the glowing nebula, listening to the faint hum that still lingers in the stars. For those who listen closely, the hum seems to whisper softly, not in any language but in feeling. Be calm, be wise, remember the silence. And somewhere deep within the endless dark, a quiet ship drifts peacefully, its lights dim, its purpose fulfilled. The myths are no longer myths, they are history, they are legacy, they are proof.